Joel Story 2.4 Analyzing different activity demands. All different sports and different elements of sports will require specific types of training as well as different demands these sports will require and place upon our body systems. In addition, these sports, as effects of requiring and demanding these different aspects, will cause different adaptations to occur when we train. For example, a sports performer such as a 10,000 meter runner would train in different ways and their bodies would demand different things to a 100 meter sprinter. As well as this, they would need different adaptations to take place due to their training and particular sports performance. For example, a 100 meter runner would require lots of muscle speed and fast glycolytic muscle fibers, as opposed to a 10,000 meter runner who would instead require more fog and slow oxidative fibers, as well as low body fat percentage. All sporting activities will require different methods of training in order to allow our bodily functions to correctly adapt best, suiting a person to a particular sport. For example, different events will require different types of work and energy systems used, therefore allowing different demands and adaptations to take place. In terms of a 100 meter sprinter and a 10,000 meter runner, these events both differ in the energy systems used, as well as the type of work and many other factors. A 100 meter sprinter would be an example of working anaerobically, whereas a 10,000 meter runner would be working aerobically in their event, as it is for a high duration and as a lower intensity, as opposed to a 100 meter, which is high intensity, low duration. These differences in the sports will cause differing other factors contributing to the sports. For example, both sports would require different components of fitness central to the sports, as one would require good cardiovascular fitness and adaptations such as hypertrophy of the myocardium. On the other hand, one would require explosive power and would cause adaptations of more fast glycolytic fibers being recruited. These two sporting events would also require different training methods as they require different things. These would consist of a 100 meter sprint doing more fast explosive training methods in order to build muscle and increase speed, whereas a 10,000 meter runner would do more long distance work in order to increase their cardiovascular fitness and cause the adaptation of muscular hypertrophy and hyperplasia in the heart. Therefore, these events would cause different bodily adaptations to occur after these range of things, such as an increase in fast glycolytic fibers to muscular hypertrophy. Aerobic training. When training aerobically over a long period of time, for example 2 to 3 months, you may use a range of different training methods and principles of training in order to achieve the correct and necessary adaptations to be successful. One specific type of aerobic training would be muscular endurance training. This would be performed at between 60 to 80% of a person's 1 rep max, and would also be performed for a high amount of reps, 10 to 12 roughly. This is due to the fact that in order to increase muscular endurance, you must perform exercises for a high amount of reps, therefore meaning you must be working at a lower weight. For example, if a person wanted to increase muscular endurance of their chest, they would perform more reps of bench press on a lower weight, as opposed to a high amount of weight and lower reps. This is due to the fact that our body will take up adaptations such as muscular hypertrophy when working for many reps, and therefore increasing overall muscular endurance, which is why this particular principle of fitness falls under aerobic training. In terms of fit principles, aerobic training would be performed fairly frequently, a few times a week, in order to see maximal improvements and adaptations. In addition, the intensity of these sessions would be less intense than anaerobic, however last longer durations due to more continuous exercises and reps being performed. These sessions would tend to last a considerable amount of time, as this is what would be most beneficial in allowing adaptations to take place. Types of aerobic training that would help to maximally produce these adaptations to take place would be: firstly, continuous training. This would be done as a form of aerobic training and can be done to improve cardiovascular fitness or even things such as muscular endurance. In terms of cardiovascular fitness training, this would work by doing a long duration of running, only working between 65 to 80% of max heart rate. This would be performed for up to 30 minutes with no breaks. This is an example of continuous training and is an aerobic training method which would help a person to best achieve these adaptations. Another example of aerobic training would be fartlek training. This is where, in terms of cardiovascular training, a person would perform a sprint followed by a jog followed by a walk for a sustained period of time. This is a form of aerobic training and would be performed at, once again, roughly between 70 and 85% of a person's max heart rate for a similar amount of time, 30 minutes. This would also help a person to gain aerobic adaptations of training and is a good method to see fast improvements. These factors, all in terms of aerobic training, are why this is successful and all performed well, and sticking to the fit principles discussed would help a person training whatever aerobic factor from cardiovascular to muscular endurance to power would help a person greatly achieve these adaptations. Anaerobic training. Anaerobic training for a significant period of time, 2 to 3 months, would cause it's done with a range of different training methods and principles of fitness to help bodily systems maintain certain aerobic adaptations in order to benefit a person in their sport. One specific type of aerobic training would include speed training. This would be performed at between 85 to 95% of a person's 1 rep max and would consist of less reps, more weight, meaning between 6 to 8 and 8 to 10 reps of each exercise. This is due to the fact that this is a great way to train in order to increase and develop muscle mass, which, as opposed to muscular endurance in aerobic training, is a great way to achieve and improve anaerobic adaptations. This is because anaerobic adaptations gained from training would include increase in muscle mass and size, and these activities include explosive power, movements and contractions, and therefore these larger muscles are more successful in performing these types of contraction. For example, if a person wanted to improve speed, they would, instead of doing continuous low intensity duration training like aerobic discussed earlier, they would do short, very high intense bursts of sprints, working at between 85 to 95% of their max heart rate, and would do this for a low duration as to maximally increase their fast glycolytic fibers as adaptations and therefore increase performance in sport, which could be for a 100-meter sprinter, for example. In terms of fit principles, anaerobic training would be like aerobic training in the sense that it would be performed frequently, which would be a few times a week, in order to see maximal improvements. This would be performed at a very high intensity, as it is to increase muscle mass and power, and is also to increase the recruitment of fast glycolytic muscle fibers. These sessions, as reusing a lot of hard intense work, would only consist of short period of time, up to 30 minutes, and would include breaks as to allow a person time to recover. There are many different types of anaerobic training that would be beneficial to a performer in order to maximize these adaptations. These would include HIIT training. This consists of high intensity interval training and would be great for anaerobic training, as this is performed at a high intensity in short bursts, which, as discussed, is one of the most effective ways to train anaerobically. In terms of this particular training, you would be working at between 85 and 95% of your max heart rate, and would be doing less reps, 6 to 8, but higher intensity. In terms of speed, this could look like short bursts of intense speed repeated 6 to 8 times, working in this heart rate zone. This method of training includes lots of intervals and breaks in order to recover, as this is when a person is working close to their max heart rate, so they will need time to recover. Another example of anaerobic training would be plyometric training. Plyometrics, also known as jump training, are exercises in which exert maximum force in short intervals of time with a goal of increasing power. This certain type of training would be necessary if a person was anaerobically training, as this requires you to exert your muscles to the maximum potential in short periods of time. This would be greatly beneficial in terms of anaerobic training, as these maximal contractions would help to increase muscle mass. During this particular type of training, you would need to be working in the region of between 90 to 100% of your 1 rep max, as well as 80 to 95% of your maximum heart rate. This type of training would also include breaks and stoppages in between these maximal contractions in order to allow the body time to recover slightly and allow the fast components of EPOC to occur. This type of training is high intensity and low duration, so therefore exercises such as throwing medicine balls or other very intense contraction exercises would be performed for only 6 to 8 reps. All these factors discussed in terms of the FIT principles and examples of exercises and heart rate zones are all contributing factors in how to best perform anaerobic training in order to maximally benefit a person. For example, the two methods discussed are a great way in order to perform this particular way of training and how to best improve a person's anaerobic performance and allow anaerobic adaptations to exercise to occur maximally.